5:31 here at KAHI. Welcome back to the Wednesday edition of the KAHI Afternoon News. Casey Freelove with you here in studio. Pleased to be joined by Congressman Tom McClintock for our weekly conversation. And Tom, I just want to start by talking a little bit about the Stop Dangerous Sanctuary Cities Act. I was reading about it on our website. Of course, is a bill introduced by both yourself and Congressman Darren LaHood to protect communities from violent criminals who are in the United States illegally. We've been talking about illegal immigration for quite some time, and I just want to kind of, start with the basics, what the bill is. And I guess my first question is, did you just feel kind of, at this point, we've talked about it so long that you really had to get out there and put your name on something and really do something about it based on feedback from your constituents and beyond?
Well, there's no question about it. And again, we're not just talking about illegal aliens. We're talking about criminal illegal aliens who've already committed crimes, been convicted of those crimes. We've incarcerated them, and under federal law, as their prison term comes to an end, the state or local authorities that are holding them then are required to contact ICE so ICE can take them into custody while they're still in prison and deport them. But these sanctuary cities, and now, of course, California being a sanctuary state, refuse to notify ICE of these releases. So instead of the criminal having served their sentence being deported out of our country, the criminal is instead released into our communities, and they're doing that deliberately. So H.R. 3000, which is the bill you're referring to, simply says a number of things. Number one, if you do that as a state or a locality, we are cutting off federal funding to you. If you're not going to enforce federal laws, we should not be giving you money. And secondly, we're going to give it to those communities that are loyal to the nation and are trying to protect their people from violence. So, for example, in our region, we've got lots of county sheriffs across the Sierra who are mad as hell about the sanctuary policies, who want to cooperate with federal authorities, but are forbidden to by state law. Well, what we're saying is, hey, don't worry about the state law. If you are enforcing federal law, we deem you to be federal law enforcement, in which case the Supremacy Clause says that the federal law trumps the state law. That's very important to protect these police chiefs and sheriffs who want to continue to protect their communities and cooperate with the federal government to deport these dangerous criminal illegals. And at the same time, it says that you're going to get the funding that we are cutting off from the other communities that are asserting this doctrine of nullification.
I know you've talked with countless law enforcement officials, not just in California, but beyond. I'm wondering about the early feedback, and I know obviously your conversations with them and really every average day citizens, because I've done a bunch of news stories about criminal illegal immigrants that have altered people's lives. I mean, that must have played a big part in wanting to get this out there.
Exactly right, and again, some of the people who are angriest about these sanctuary policies in California are local police chiefs and sheriffs who are desperately trying to protect their communities from these violent predators.
Now, as far as the legislation, it addresses court decisions that may leave local police and municipalities liable when they assist the Department of Homeland Security. But I mean, I guess just to ask you to further elaborate. Essentially, you're saying that at the local level, even if you're in a state like California where the governor said, look, we're just going to be a sanctuary state and people can kind of do as they will, these law enforcement officers who, in effect, are doing their job would be able to essentially not get in trouble for doing that, for doing what they're paid to do and what they want to do as enforcement officials.
Exactly. The state sanctuary laws forbid local police chiefs and sheriffs from notifying ICE before these dangerous criminals are released from county jails or, and for that matter, from the state prisons. What this bill says is we're going to preempt that law. Police and sheriffs, please turn these criminals over to ICE while they're still in custody. And again, this is hugely important to protect law enforcement as well. Remember, when they're still in custody in prison, they are controlled, they are unarmed, they are easy to take into custody and deport. These sanctuary laws are requiring them to be released into our community. So for our ICE agents to enforce federal law and deport these criminal aliens, they have to go out in the communities where these criminal aliens are now not controlled, where they have rearmed themselves, and the risk to law enforcement increases dramatically, along with innocent bystanders who might be caught in crossfire. So, it is so important that our local police and sheriffs are allowed to do their jobs, protect our citizens, and get these criminal illegal aliens the hell out of the country rather than releasing them back into our community so they can commit more crimes.
We're talking with Congressman Tom McClintock here on KAHI Radio. And as I was reading online, you've got broad support from some pretty large groups, and I assume that played a role in it. They probably were relieved. I mean, is that fair to say that you are out there putting this in front of the public and at least getting some attention on it?
Oh, yes. I mean, the law enforcement groups are all very much in favor of this. The only law enforcement we've seen opposed are the politically appointed big city police chiefs who are refusing to protect their citizens.
Now, I was also reading that there's companion legislation that was introduced in the Senate by Senator Pat Toomey. And, forgive my political ignorance, but how is that different from what Congress will be looking at as compared to what the Senate would be looking at as far as eventually getting this, perhaps, I mean, who knows with the way voting is going, but perhaps getting some sort of law written about it?
Well, here's the problem. In the House, the bill's not going to move. The Democrats are now in full control of the House. The only legislation they've adopted so far respecting illegal immigration is to extend amnesty for millions of illegal immigrants already in the country. They couldn't care less about enforcing our borders. In fact, they've blocked every attempt to enforce our borders, and I have no hope at all that they're even going to allow a hearing on this bill. The Senate is a different matter. The Senate still has a Republican majority. Pat Toomey has introduced identical legislation to ours over there. There it can get a hearing. It may even pass the Senate. Unfortunately, it won't have a chance in the House. So what we're trying to do with this is get the legislation in print, get it discussed, get it debated, and then hope that the next Congress will be willing to pass this legislation and that we'll have a president willing to sign it.
Tom, let me change gears in our last couple minutes talking here. I just did a recent news item about forest thinning to cut wildfire risk on U.S. Forest Service land around French Meadow Reservoir in Placer County that is set to begin in June. It's got an estimated price tag of $3.5 million. The reason why I bring that up is clearly, I mean, we just had a freak May with a bunch of different rain coming in, which of course is a blessing, and water storage is a topic for another day. But what that means is obviously there's going to be even more brush and more kindling. We've already kind of had an unofficial start to wildfire season. Do you think that our listening audience and people in this area can expect to see more of this kind of action, and would it be helpful? And I guess my follow-up on that would be, what is going on at the national level as far as addressing, what has become a real crisis here as far as the future of wildfire, and just trying to make sure that there is a little bit less fuel for those fires here in your home state of California? Well,
French Meadow is a special case. French Meadow is the watershed for the Placer County Water Agency. The Placer County Water Agency went to the Forest Service and said, look, you might have control of this land, but it's our watershed. If this burns, we lose our water. Please get out of the way and at least allow us to thin the forest so that it doesn't burn. And, of course, they still have to comply with all of the environmental regulations, which are the core of the problem. So you've got several millions of dollars of merchantable timber. This could actually be making money for Placer County and the federal government and the local communities. Instead, because they have to jump through all these environmental hoops, it is costing ratepayers in this case millions of dollars just to comply with the bureaucratic regulations. The sad and bitter fact of the matter is we don't have enough money in the federal treasury to pay for the environmental loophole or environmental hoops that we have to now go through in order to thin our forests. When we did that, we used to make money. Now that those laws have been imposed since the 1970s, it costs us money. And that's the heart of the problem. So French Meadows is moving forward because it is a critical watershed, but it is still costing ratepayers millions of dollars when it ought to be making ratepayers millions of dollars.
We've been visiting with Congressman Tom McClintock here on KAHI Radio. Tom, as always, thank you very much for your time, and we'll look forward to visiting again soon.
My pleasure, Casey. Thanks for having me.
We'll take a quick break, get a check on California headline news, then come back with a check on more local news. You're listening to The Voice of the Foothills, FM 104.5 and AM 950 KAHI.
It may not require